In 1904, a single woman in Cleveland, Ohio, quietly owed the banks of America millions of dollars. She had no fortune of her own, no business, no inheritance, nothing. The only collateral she had ever offered was a single sentence, that she was the secret, illegitimate daughter of the richest man on earth. And on the strength of that one lie, the most respectable bankers in the country handed her a fortune. Her name was Cassie Chadwick. Let's talk about Cassie Chadwick for a second, because she didn't fool one greedy fool. She fooled an entire financial system. She was born Elizabeth Bigley in 1857 in rural Ontario, Canada. And from a very young age, she had one extraordinary talent: convincing people that money was coming. As a teenager, she was caught using a forged letter that claimed she was about to inherit a fortune from a dead relative. That was the whole pattern of her life in miniature. Not stealing money directly, but making people believe a fortune was just around the corner and getting them to pay for it in advance. And she practiced for decades. Over the years, she moved from town to town under a string of invented identities. A clairvoyant here, a wealthy widow there, running smaller schemes, getting caught more than once, and even serving time for forgery before reinventing herself all over again. Each failure only sharpened the method. By the time she became Cassie Chadwick, she had spent half a lifetime learning exactly how much people will believe when they badly want something to be true. But here's what almost nobody knows about how she pulled off the biggest version of that trick. By the 1890s, she had reinvented herself in Cleveland as Cassie, a respectable doctor's wife. And she was about to aim that talent at the single most valuable name in America. To understand the con, you have to understand the name she borrowed: Andrew Carnegie. In the early 1900s, Andrew Carnegie was not just rich. He was the richest man in the world. The steel magnate who had sold his empire for hundreds of millions of dollars. His name, on a piece of paper, was as good as gold, better than gold. And Cassie's plan depended on one cruel detail of the era: reputation. In Gilded Age America, a wealthy man having a secret, illegitimate child was a scandal so shameful that everyone involved would go to enormous lengths to keep it quiet. Quiet and paid off. Cassie understood something the bankers didn't. The very shame of the secret would make it impossible to check. So in 1897, she arranged a performance that would set the whole thing in motion. She had a respectable Cleveland lawyer escort her to New York City, to Andrew Carnegie's mansion itself. She asked the lawyer to wait in the carriage outside. Then she walked up to the door of the richest man in America, and she went inside. What actually happened, and there was nothing. By most accounts, she invented a small pretext, asking about a servant, and simply stayed long enough to look like she belonged. But the lawyer outside didn't know that. After about half an hour, Cassie walked back out of Carnegie's mansion clutching papers, and, as if by accident, let her lawyer glimpse them. Promissory notes, apparently signed by Andrew Carnegie, for millions of dollars. In that one moment, in the eyes of a credible witness, Cassie Chadwick became the secret daughter of the richest man alive, quietly being paid to keep the family's shame hidden. And quick! If a woman walking out of Carnegie's house and inventing a fortune already sounds impossible, tap the like button. It's the one thing that tells YouTube to show this story to more people who'd want to hear it. And let's keep going. Cassie never had to spread the rumor herself. That was the genius of it. The lawyer, believing he had witnessed something extraordinary and confidential, did the talking for her. The story moved in whispers exactly where she wanted it to go, into the ears of bankers. And the bankers reacted the way she had bet they would. Here was a woman who appeared to hold millions in promissory notes from Andrew Carnegie himself. Notes she couldn't cash openly, because that would expose the scandal. So instead, she would quietly borrow against them. For a banker, this was a dream. Lend money to Carnegie's secret heir at high interest, and one day collect against the fortune of the richest man on earth. They didn't just agree to lend to her. They competed for the privilege. And if true stories this audacious are exactly your thing, this channel is nothing but them, a new one here every couple of days. So subscribe and stay with me, because the size of what she pulled off next is almost hard to believe. For years, Cassie Chadwick borrowed and borrowed and borrowed, hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time, from bank after bank, across Cleveland and beyond. And she lived exactly the way a secret Carnegie heir was supposed to live. Lavish parties, astonishing jewelry, so many fine dresses that newspapers later struggled to count them. She once reportedly handed out thousands of dollars in tips at a single Christmas. Estimates of what she ultimately borrowed run into the millions. By some accounts, well over $10 million. In today's money, that is hundreds of millions. And she kept the whole thing spinning with a simple, ruthless trick. When one loan came due, she didn't pay it back from any real fortune. She paid it with money freshly borrowed from the next bank and the next one after that. As long as new lenders kept lining up, the old ones kept getting paid on time, and no one had any reason to doubt her. It was a tower of borrowed money, balanced entirely on a name that was never hers. And the bankers stayed silent, which was the real engine of the whole thing. Each one believed he held a private, exclusive connection to the Carnegie fortune. None of them compared notes. None of them wanted to be the one to cause a scandal that might cost them the payout. The secret that should have exposed her was the exact thing protecting her. One banker in particular went too far. The president of a bank in Oberlin, Ohio, lent her so much of his bank's money that he bet the entire institution on her. And in 1904, the bet came due. It started with a different lender who finally demanded that Cassie repay a loan and sued when she didn't. The lawsuit dragged the magic word into the open, Carnegie. And the moment the claim became public, a single question could finally be asked out loud. Someone simply asked Andrew Carnegie if it was true. Carnegie said he had never met Cassie Chadwick. He had never signed a promissory note in his entire life. He didn't know her at all. And the entire fortune, the millions of dollars of collateral the banks had been lending against, evaporated in a single sentence. The promissory notes were forgeries. The signatures were fake. There was no secret daughter, no hidden inheritance, nothing behind any of it but Cassie's nerve. The Oberlin bank that had bet everything on her collapsed. Its president was ruined. Panic rippled through every institution that had quietly lent her money. So before the end, be honest with me. If you've been one of those bankers looking at notes signed Andrew Carnegie and a witness who saw her leave his mansion, would you have lent her the money? Tell me in the comments. I read them. Cassie Chadwick was arrested, and the trial became a national sensation. Andrew Carnegie himself reportedly showed up in the courtroom, not as a victim who had lost a cent, because he never had, but simply out of curiosity to see the woman who had used his name to borrow millions. And by every account, Carnegie was more amused than angry. He had lost nothing. He had never signed a single thing. He is said to have marveled that in all those years, not one of the bankers had ever thought to simply come and ask him. The newspapers gave her grand nicknames, and her scheme went down in history as one of the largest confidence frauds of its age. She was convicted in 1905 and sentenced to prison. She was sent to the Ohio Penitentiary. And there, in 1907, the woman who had once handed out thousands of dollars on a whim died behind bars with nothing. And historians and writers have studied her con ever since. Because Cassie Chadwick didn't break into a single vault. She didn't pick a single lock. She understood that the most powerful force in finance isn't money, it's belief. Belief in a name, belief in a reputation, and the quiet shame that stops powerful people from ever asking the obvious question. She borrowed a fortune against a signature that never existed, from men who were too proud, too greedy, and too afraid of scandal to check. A doctor's wife from Cleveland convinced the American banking system that she was Andrew Carnegie's secret daughter, and it simply paid her, for years, to keep the secret she had invented. That's real. If this story surprised you, the like button is right there. And if you want more stories that should be fiction but aren't, there's a new one here every couple of days. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next.